When I started filmmaking, pre-production was probably the one thing that I neglected and underestimated the most. So now, a couple years later, I learned from my mistakes. So in this video, I want to give you some tips and tricks on how to better your pre-production, what to look out for, which tools to use so that you can be more efficient and eventually even earn more money. And this video is sponsored by Milanote because Milanote is the one tool that I use for all of my pre-production for years now. In this video, I will give you some general advice on how to do pre-production, but I will also show you 3 different projects that I've done in the past and how I did my pre-production. One commercial project, one online course, and also one narrative project with a cast and crew of over 40 people. Since we have a lot of ground to cover, let's jump right in. And let's start with the one thing that I absolutely overlooked in the beginning, and that is charging for your pre-production. A lot of the times when working with a small to medium client and dealing with their marketing department, you are working with people that are full-time employees of that company. So more often than not, they will call you multiple times prior to the project, sometimes even ask you to come over to check out a location or schedule multiple meetings. And if you're not charging for this, that can add up quickly. The same is also true when you're being hired as a crew member. This could be a first AC, this could be the director of photography, or any person on set really. Because usually you give them your day rate, but then sometimes they ask you to also attend a pre-production meeting, or what if they ask you to pick up something from the rental store prior to the shoot. You should also charge for your time that you invest prior to the project, and this is something that needs to be established right when you get the gig, so that you know that if you're showing up on multiple meetings and you're doing stuff prior to the actual day of shooting, you're either being paid or not. And this all ties into the very first thing that I do when I get a job offer. I will sort out what kind of equipment do I need, what time do we need to shoot this, is there post-production involved, and do I have all the equipment, or do I need to rent something, and if I have the equipment, how much am I charging for it? And usually here I also have a rough idea of how much pre-production needs to go into this, or I just give the client a rough estimate of my time that I'm charging for pre-production. And then I'm writing the client an offer and wait for them to either accept or decline it. This I'm not charging for because I don't even have the job yet. And this also includes usually one meeting with the client so they can tell me what exactly do they need, what they need of me, what kind of equipment, what vision do they have, so that I can make a good estimate and I can write them an offer. So for this, I'm not charging. I'm starting to charge for pre-production and production and post-production once I do have a signed written offer that I'm actually getting the job. Cool, now we got the job and we can start planning. And this phase really depends on what project it is and what kind of client you have. Are you dealing with an ad agency? Are you dealing with the client directly? Are you being hired in a really big crew as a crew member and they have a producer that takes care of most of the pre-production? Or are you acting as a full service production company and you're doing everything yourself? And if the heavy lifting falls on you, then this is also where you start charging for your time. And this could be for getting some permits, as well as maybe renting or buying and sorting some gear, as well as assembling your crew and maybe even some location scouting. Speaking of location scouting, let's actually make this our next step. When you're showing up on the location on 11 AM on a Saturday, but you're actually shooting on a Tuesday afternoon, this could vary a lot because maybe there is construction during the week that you don't see on the Saturday where you're actually looking at the location. Also, the sun and the light will be completely different at 11 AM than it will be at 4 PM when you might start shooting on your Tuesday. A good app for establishing where the sun will be on any given time is an app called Sunseeker, for example, that I've been using, and you can actually see where the sun will be at a certain time in the day. And this is really helpful if you have really big windows, because that might actually determine what kind of lighting equipment you need to bring. Another app I always like to bring on location scouting is CatRage. This app allows you to put in your camera, your sensor, your focal length, and your specific lens choice, and then use this as if you had your actual camera with you. And here you can take pictures or videos, and then you can also factor this into your pre-production later, so you know exactly what angles you can shoot with and what framing you need, and that also determines what possibilities you have on location, as well as what lighting equipment you will need. Now that we have all the information that we need, we have our permits, we have our location, as well as the crew that we need for it, we need a tool to actually organize everything, assemble everything, and start planning. And the tool that I'm using for this, and I have been using for this for years, is Milanote. In Milanote, you can start with a blank page, but you can also use one of their many templates. And they even have templates for film and TV. And this is what I usually use to start with. You have a pre-production plan that looks roughly like this, but you also have a storyboard or a shot list, mood boards, character profiles, everything you need to start your project. So let me show you the pre-production plan of a previous project. And this was a really big project with a crew of 10 people, and we shot this over 3 days, and this was my interview online course. And here we really needed to be well organized to make this happen in time. Right here, we're looking at the pre-production plan. And this is where I like to gather all the information that are important for not only me, but also the rest of the crew. Speaking of the rest of the crew, this is the really cool thing about Milanote, because everybody can collaborate in one file. You just have to invite all of the crew members, and then they can not only see what you're doing, but they can also make changes to it. In Milanote, you have everything in one place. So here, for example, we can easily integrate Google Maps into it so that there is no misunderstandings where people need to be. There's also the option to put in the most important contacts. So for example, if the producer shows up and they're in charge of the location, then they also know where to find the phone number of the person in charge of the location. And then we also have the entire cast and crew, and you can add their phone numbers so that you don't need to be that one person that everybody called, because you might have better things to do and more important things, so that everybody can go into Milanote and they can look up the number of the person that they actually need to talk to, even though they might not even know each other. One really cool feature of Milanote is creating checklists. So for this project, we needed a lot of equipment. So to make sure that we're not forgetting anything, we actually created a checklist for all the equipment needed, and then we could just easily check this off. And you can also assign this to different people so that they know that they need to bring this and that there are no misunderstandings. The very first thing when I start a project in Milanote is I just insert all the important information, the crew, the phone numbers, the location, etc. And then the next step I do is I create a mood board. And here we already have a template for it. And for this interview course, I just gathered some pictures online that I wanted this to look like, and also the vibe that I want to achieve. Here you can use these little notes so that everybody knows what you're looking for. You can attach these stickers with different colors, so you get a color palette that everybody knows and is aware of. And again, you can just insert all kinds of different pictures. You could also use videos if you like. Here I also used Cat Rage, so the camera that we were using was a Red Komodo, and we were shooting on an 18mm, so that I knew what kind of framing would I have for our location. Another thing I included was the schedule and call sheet, so that everybody knows when they need to be where, and that we also have an outline of when we need to be finished with shooting a certain type of content, so that we're actually getting through everything in time. And now for the most important and crucial thing for this project, the content plan. We also put the entire content plan together in Milanote. Here we have an outline of what needs to be shot, what we need for it, and in which order we needed to shoot it. Let me give you an example. One category in the online course was composition and location, and one subcategory was choosing your location. So here we just put in some script notes that needed to be filmed. As soon as we filmed them, the producer was able to just check this off, and it was synced across all of the devices, so everybody had access to it, so we knew we don't need to film this anymore. We also attached a scene number to it, which made it way easier in post-production. And then we also had another category where we also included what B-roll needed to be filmed for it. And that way it was way easier to just keep track of everything that needed to be filmed. I also attached what kind of cameras we needed for it and in what kind of setting this was. Most of the times it was in the talking head, 2 cameras and 1 microphone setup, but sometimes we also filmed something in a live demo. And if you're interested in the interview online course, there's a link down in the description for you to check out. And as you can see here, there was a lot of content to be shot. And without Milanote, this would have been an absolute nightmare. The same is true for our next example project. And this is a short film that we recently wrapped up with a crew of about 12 to 15 people, as well as a cast of almost 30. Not being absolutely organized here, this would have not worked out in the time frame that we had. We shot over 4 days in multiple locations, and with that many people involved, we needed to be really well organized. And here's a true little story for you. On our first pre-production meeting for this short film, we sat down with the director, me, the director of photography, the assistant director, the lead actress who was also the screenwriter, as well as the gaffer. And when we started to do our pre-production, everybody just brought out a different kind of format. Some had just notes on their device, some had written notes, some used some other tools, and we were quickly realizing that if everybody just keeps track of their own notes, that would be an absolute nightmare. So I suggested to use Milanote. I showed them quickly what Milanote can do, and then we decided to use it for the entire project. And I think the director even signed up for Milanote right in this pre-production meeting, and everybody was absolutely excited to keep using this from now on. So here again, you can see our pre-production plan. It's just the essentials with the key contacts as well as our permits that you can see here. So whenever we are on location and somebody asks for a permit, we can just go on Milanote, click in here, and there's all of our permits that we need. And again, one thing that we did is we created a mood board. And here we even created mood boards for the different scenes and the different locations, including the colors and what kind of vibe we wanted to have. Another thing we used on this project were the different character profiles. Here, for example, we have the lead actress. We gave her a background story, characteristics, some quirks and flaws, and also some inspirational outfits for the different scenes so that we had everything in one place, and we did this for all the actors that were involved in the project. Aside from the script and the call sheet, we also created a shot list. And for a project that big, that was absolutely crucial. So we had everything planned out perfectly in advance so that there were no questions and wondering and idle time on set. We included a detailed shot list for every single scene. We included pictures, but we also included self-drawn notes as well as blocking that we did with spoons and figurines, and also written down what kind of equipment we need for which shot and what kind of shot we actually need. And just as with our last project, we used a checklist here for our shot list. So whenever we had a shot, we checked it off, and it was synced throughout all the devices, so we were sure not to miss anything. Last but not least, let me show you the third project that I've been using Milanote for. This was a branded documentary with a budget of 50,000 euros. So the client actually asked me to put in a pitch first so that they have a rough idea of what they're getting for the price. They wanted a mood board as well as a storyline. So in the beginning, I used Milanote just to gather all the information. What kind of budget do I have? How do I break it down? What time is needed? Also some facts about the person that the documentary was about, as well as a little bit of a script that they gave me. So now that I had all these information, I could already start creating a mood board. That I can also export via Milanote and send to the client in PDF form. And the client also asked me to create a rough storyboard, which I also did right within Milanote. I created this storyboard with just little notes as well as some example images, and I also had a written down storyline. And then I could also export this as a PDF file and send it to the client. So as you can see, Milanote is a one-and-all solution for your entire creative process, especially for pre-production. And what I love about it is that I can collaborate with all the different crew members and we have everything in one place. And I really appreciate being able to just use one tool instead of having to jump from different applications, whereas this one is better here and this one is very limited in this space. With Milanote, I can just have everything in one place. And if you're interested in Milanote and you want to check it out, then use the link down in the description below and sign up for absolutely free without any time limits. I hope you enjoyed this video on how to do pre-production. You learned a little bit, and if you did, then please give this video a thumbs up because it really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more tips and tricks in the filmmaking space, as well as some behind the scenes and cinematography breakdowns, and make sure to check out Milanote with a link down in the description below.